An aspiring young rapper vanishes without a trace.
He had went to a friend's house, and that was the last time that she saw him.
I was posting on Facebook and telling everybody that my brother was missing.
His criminal record makes police think he may have been running from his problems.
She said he had put a gun to her 9-month pregnant belly.
But when an informant comes forward, the case takes a different turn.
I asked, what can you tell me? And it was an information bomb. He's been shot 4 times. At least one of those shots was in the back.
I kind of was numb when I heard about it.
And the evidence points to a killer driven by rage and desire.
She had been texting him about where was he and who was he with. Her rage was building over the course of those hours.
I think something just kind of broke inside her mind.
She killed him, disposed of him, and then helped everybody look for his body. That's just next level evil.
It's December 22nd, 2021 in Columbia, South Carolina. While most residents are getting ready for Christmas, 29-year-old Taylor Wardlaw is on the phone to police about her missing boyfriend, Terrell Sims.
We got the call from Taylor Wardlaw that Terrell had gone missing. She said that he had last been seen 2 days prior at her house, where they lived together.
Taylor says she's just now calling because she initially wasn't worried. Terrell often leaves with his friends for days at a time.
He had gone back home from a friend's house. Taylor said that Terrell left around, 6 or 7 in the morning, and she says that's the last time that she saw him. Taylor says that their relationship is not perfect, but they're in love and they don't really have problems. Taylor suggested that Terrell kind of lived by his own rules. So for him to be gone for 1 day wouldn't necessarily cause too much alarm with her. The unusual part is that he wasn't contacting anybody. He wasn't answering the phone.
Now, she's afraid something might be wrong.
You could tell that she seemed to be in distress, worried.
Missing person reports are considered high priority. The Special Victims Unit investigators began looking into the case.
At the initial start of a missing persons investigation, our Special Victims Unit would check hospitals. We'll start talking with their friends, what kind of history they have, anything that gives us a pattern of life or background into who they are.
Terrell Davon Sims was born July 6, 1995 in Columbia, South Carolina. 5 minutes later, he was followed by his twin sister, Marcella.
Terrell and Marcella never stayed in the crib. They always found a way out of the crib. I'm trying to get to Terrell, and Marcella done went this way. So, I was like, they twins.
But their family would face tragedy early on.
Terrell and Marcella were babies when our mom passed. I had just turned 10, and she was in the hospital ever since Thanksgiving. I think it was December the 18th, 1995, when she passed.
When the twins were just 4 years old, their father died as well, making them and their older sister Rose orphans.
Me, my brother, and my sister had to go live with our aunt. We took care of each other.
Growing up, I had a lot of responsibilities with Terrell and Marcella. I would try to help out as much as I could.
Though their childhood was not easy, the siblings took solace in each other.
Terrell used to cheer me up because I was more softer and he was a little bit more tougher. He would always make me laugh and lift me up.
As a teenager, Terrell's skill at making others laugh served him well in school.
He was like one of those type of students that like to make people laugh in the classroom, always getting in trouble. Terrell was a class clown.
Terrell's natural charm made him popular with the women in his life as well.
He was a ladies' man. He was loving, sweet, funny, and he would date different girls, and that's just how he was.
When I met Terrell Sims, I'd seen this boy running around in the neighborhood with no shirt on, and he just drew my attention. He was so polite. I told him my name, and I told him that I liked him, and ever since then, we was unstoppable.
When his aunt's health began to fail, Terrell dropped out of school to care for her.
She needed him, so he didn't turn his back on her. Anything that she needed, he was right there.
After his aunt died in 2016, Terrell left home to start a life for himself. He found an apartment in the Columbia Section 8 housing development known as the Colonies.
It's for the low-income people. They help you and stuff like that.
Terrell did work at the hibachi restaurant. He would talk about the things that he would do, like wash dishes and stuff and clean up.
Terrell did what he needed to make ends meet, but his true passion lay in music.
Terrell loved to come up with different rhymes, and he would always try to get me to listen to it. Terrell could sing. He used to always sing during church and all types of stuff.
He was good. Terrell just loved music.
Being a musician helped his image as a ladies' man as well. By the time he was 23, Terrell had fathered 3 children.
Terrell had different baby moms, different children. He would feed them, cook for them, take care of them.
Terrell loved all his kids, but Terrell just wasn't ready to settle down. Terrell didn't find that special one.
In 2018, Terrell seemed to finally meet his match, a single mother named Taylor Wardlaw.
She moved from New York to the Colonies. Terrell, one day, him and his homeboy was walking down the block, and he seen Taylor and the other girl, and he drew attention to Taylor, and then they was talking ever since.
Taylor, she grew up in the Bronx, and she came from a good home. She was just family-oriented. When I first met Taylor, she just always wanted to be like an entrepreneur. You know, she wants to be her own boss. She had like a good head on her shoulders. She always gave me this vibe that like, you know, she always had it going for herself. My son with Taylor was born June 2014. We was just taking care of him as like a whole, co-parenting, everything.
When that relationship ended, Taylor moved south for a new start. Before long, she'd met and fallen in love with Terrell.
She took care of him. Terrell would brag about how she could cook all the time.
I felt like Taylor was a step up for him. He was doing a little better with her. He started to really want for himself more.
In 2020, they had a child together. And though neither were first-time parents, they were overjoyed to start their own family. After dating for 2 years, it seemed Terrell wanted to be more than just a father.
That's when Terrell moved in with Taylor. Taylor would go to work in the morning and Terrell would stay home and watch the kids. And then Terrell would go to work at the hibachi restaurant. And then Taylor would take the kids.
Taylor, she wanted to be the person that he spent the rest of his life with. My first impression of her as I got to know her, it was like, oh, she's stuck on him.
They had just moved into a new house together. They had this new baby together. So they seemed like they were moving in the right direction.
Now, just 3 days before Christmas, Terrell is missing, and no one seems to know where he is.
That ain't like Terrell. No matter where Terrell is, Terrell always lets somebody know where he at.
Taylor doesn't know exactly how he left the house. He had been dropped off by a friend, and she's not sure if a friend picked him up.
But according to Taylor, there might be a good reason why Terrell isn't talking to anyone. It seems their once perfect relationship had recently taken a turn for the worse.
She said that Terrell was on bond for domestic violence.
He had previously gotten out of jail a few months prior to going missing. Terrell and Taylor had, at times, a tumultuous relationship. At that point, she's worried that he may have gotten up and left town.
Coming up, a look into Terrell's life hints at unspoken tensions.
We got the idea that Terrell wanted to find a way out.
And a new witness comes forward with disturbing allegations.
Taylor said that Terrell had come home late and they got into some sort of argument. "48 hours after the last known sighting of Terrell Sims, investigators respond in person to learn more information from his girlfriend, Taylor Wardlaw. Taylor tells investigators that she and Terrell had a tumultuous history, and about 18 months ago, it turned violent.
Police reports indicated that the summer of 2020, Taylor called the police to report a domestic violence event. She relayed to them that he had put a gun to her 9-month pregnant belly, threatened her life.
There was nothing other than the statement to corroborate what happened. This was a he said, she said kind of situation. Ultimately, he was arrested because they did develop probable cause.
Terrell had a few misdemeanors, but the charge of domestic violence seemed like a large step from his other charges.
Records show Terrell sat in jail for almost a year before posting bail, missing the birth of their child. He was released 4 months prior in August of 2021, but is currently facing charges of domestic violence of an aggravated nature.
And he had an ankle monitor. In this case, there's an exclusion zone that's set, and people that are on ankle monitor, they cannot go within 1,000 feet of the victim's address.
There was a strict no contact provision in his bond, so he was not supposed to be in contact with Taylor, certainly not living with her. And of course, he was.
Taylor never updated her address with the ankle monitor company, so that was how they circumvented being able to maintain the relationship after he bonded out.
To investigators, avoiding being caught violating the terms of his bond seems like a compelling reason for Terrell to disappear. The question is, why he hasn't contacted Taylor or his family.
We found out that Taylor was actually the one that posted the bond for Terrell back in August.
She stayed in contact with him the entire time he was in jail.
Taylor was actually trying to get the case tossed out. She even told us specifically that facts were wrong, it was a mistake.
She said that she did not feel threatened by him and that she wanted him back in the home so he could be a dad to their newborn.
When those domestic violence things started coming up, I was surprised because he never bruised at me, and we've been together a long time.
Terrell wouldn't pull no gun out on Taylor. He wouldn't do that.
According to Taylor, she and Terrell had been trying to patch things up. On December 20th, authorities received a call from the ankle monitoring company, but it wasn't a top priority for them.
It's just an automatic notification to our office, but police had no information about whether he was involved in any sort of altercation or arguments with anybody else.
Per protocol, Terrell's listed contacts were also notified.
My cousin called me and told me that they called her about the ankle monitor being temporary, being cut off. So I got on the phone and I called Taylor.
Taylor was already aware that his ankle monitor had been cut off, and she knew that the last point of the ping, the 6600 block of Monticello Road. That area of Monticello Road is pretty rural, spaced out. There's a lot of big properties, a lot of woods, a lot of creeks, a lot of streams.
Taylor tells officers she got the notification 48 hours ago on the 20th, which means by now, Terrell could be anywhere. Columbia police put out a statewide alert for other agencies to be on the lookout.
At the time, we're dealing with COVID. People are calling out of work. So we're having to work on modified schedules.
Since police don't have the resources for a manhunt, Terrell's sisters take matters into their own hands.
I was posting on Facebook and telling everybody that my brother was missing.
With Terrell missing for 48 hours, Taylor takes to social media to organize a search of her own.
Normally when a person go missing, you be like, okay, let's get together as a family and let's find him. It was none of that.
Taylor had posted on Facebook as well that she was organizing a search party for Terrell, and it was around the area of Monticello Road because that was his last known location.
On December 28th, the social media blitz seems to pay off.
In the middle of the night, Columbia Police Department got an unexpected visitor at headquarters who wanted to speak with an investigator. She said that she might have some information regarding Terrell's whereabouts.
She says he's in fact dead, and she knows who did it.
Over a week after Terrell Sims' disappearance, a mysterious informant comes forward alleging that Terrell is dead. The case is immediately reassigned to Sergeant Mitch Henry with the Violent Crime Unit.
I sat her down, and I always start my interviews very open-ended. What can you tell me? And it was an information bomb. The first thing that she tells me is that Taylor, who is a friend to her, as well as a male that she knew by the name Youngsta, came to her house pretty late that night.
She says they sat in her car talking for a while. Then, Taylor suddenly made a startling confession.
Taylor told her, I did it. I killed Terrell. The witness says that Taylor said that he had come home late and they got into some sort of argument.
She thought that he was cheating on her. Taylor told her that he had hit her. And so she said she shot him. She had shot him 4 times, but one of them missed.
At the time, Taylor's car was in the shop. She had a rental car. And she said that one of these bullets actually went through the siding of the house outside and struck the front hood of her rental vehicle.
According to the witness, Youngsta helped Taylor get rid of the evidence.
The witness didn't get the impression that he had anything to do with the killing, but did help Taylor move the body.
Youngster tells Taylor, I know a spot where we can dump him. So as they're driving out there, it's a good 30, 40 minutes from Terrell and Taylor's home. They remove the ankle monitor from Terrell's leg and toss it out a window.
Taylor told her that they dumped the body off of an embankment in a small creek off of Monticello Road.
With the increased media attention, Taylor is desperate to go back and make sure her tracks are covered.
According to the witness, Taylor asked her to help move the body to a different location, which the witness was refusing to do.
The witness told us the area that the ankle monitor presumably would be, which is an area near Crane Creek.
The witness says they then went their separate ways, but Taylor and Youngsta left something behind.
They both accidentally left their cell phones in the car. That's why she just showed up in the middle of the night, because she didn't want to be involved. So she gave them to us.
Without knowing the involvement of these phones, we decided to collect them as evidence and send them off for forensic processing.
While search teams comb the area around the creek looking for Terrell's body, Sergeant Henry digs further into Taylor's background.
She grew up in the Bronx. The Bronx is gritty. The Bronx is violent. She got into trouble. She grew up fighting. She always had that hostility in her.
Taylor, she didn't have any arrests, but she did own a gun. She had a concealed weapons permit.
We looked through pawn shop databases and just to see if any transactions had been made. And the day that Terrell supposedly went missing, Taylor had actually gone and pawned his grill. You haven't seen him, you're starting to get worried that he might be missing, but you're out here selling one of his favorite pieces of jewelry.
When detectives ask Terrell's loved ones what they think of his relationship with Taylor, they're less than complimentary.
Terrell's sisters kind of painted Taylor as very controlling.
Terrell was never the type of person to be with one woman, and Taylor knew that.
Taylor would do different things as far as tracking, monitoring his calls. She would do a lot of stuff to keep tabs on him. Like, he couldn't do nothing without her knowing.
Terrell been trying to end the relationships with her for a while. And I don't think Taylor could accept the fact that Terrell didn't want to be with her anymore.
We knew who the suspect was. We were in communication with Taylor. We just had to prove that it was her.
As Sergeant Henry wraps up his interviews, he gets a call from the search team. They haven't found Terrell's body yet, but they have found something else.
They were able to locate this ankle monitor about a mile up from the creek. It gave a lot more credibility to our witnesses' statement, and we were able to actually pull some data off of that device.
You could track his movements. We see that Terrell went to Irwin Street, then he went to his friend's house, and then he came back to Taylor's house.
He came home around like 4 in the morning. The last time that Terrell's ankle monitor pinged was on Monticello Road around 7:45 a.m.
The discovery tells investigators they're close to locating Terrell, but they have a daunting task ahead.
So while we've narrowed down our search area, it's still a very large swath of area of creek beds and forest, and we don't have necessarily the same resources to conduct that search.
Coming up, investigators identify Taylor's alleged accomplice.
His real name is Eddie Brown.
And it seems they both had a potential motive.
She was planning to leave Terrell for Eddie. She had just had enough.
With the discovery of Terrell Sims' ankle monitor, investigators are becoming convinced Taylor Wardlaw is a suspect in a potential homicide. But without a body to prove it, they need to proceed with caution.
We're ready to talk to Taylor, but we're not ready to interrogate her yet. We want to talk to her just as a follow-up to the missing persons investigation. We don't want her to have any semblance that we're onto her as a homicide suspect.
We need to know what she knows without her knowing that we know that.
Taylor pretty much gives us the same story that she gave the initial investigator.
Since Taylor is sticking to her story, detectives turn their attention to her alleged accomplice.
I asked the witness if she knew who Youngster was, and she had met him a few times previously, but didn't have a, official name for him. Investigator Nowlin is very good at identifying and finding people, so I said, well, what better person to try and figure out Youngster's identity? Another one of my team members, they started calling up all the local rental car agencies to see if anyone had rented a car to Taylor. And sure enough, one did. And they said, yeah, when we got the car, it had some sort of damage to the hood that she didn't report. It's a bullet hole, just like the witness said it would be. We process portions of the car with a compound that will illuminate in the presence of blood, and we found that there were traces in the trunk of the car.
They can't be sure the blood is Terrell's until it's tested. As samples are sent to the lab for analysis, investigator Nowlin is having a breakthrough of her own.
The witness said that Youngster had assisted in dumping his body, and she gave us his Facebook name. I did my due diligence and went to Taylor's Facebook page and located one of her friends that was Youngster, and I identified him.
His real name is Eddie Brown. At the time, he lived with his aunt in the Colony Apartments.
Taylor had several Facebook pages that interacted with Eddie Brown.
Investigator now was able to ascertain that Eddie may have a more romantic connection to Taylor. Now we're looking at someone that may have premeditated this murder for romantic interest.
Nowlin checks security camera footage at the apartment complex on the day Terrell disappeared and makes another discovery.
The rental car came into the Colony Apartments at 4:33 in the morning, was there for 10 minutes.
You could see Taylor getting out of her car with her 2 children and take them inside of Youngster's apartment.
When she comes out, the kids are still in there, but she and Eddie get back into the car and they drive off.
Based on what the witness told us, we believed at that point when she comes in to pick Eddie up at 4:30 in the morning, Terrell's already dead.
The rental car appears outside the apartments again around 8:30 a.m., giving Taylor and Youngster plenty of time to get rid of Terrell's body. The question is, where?
While we're canvassing, we found a camera right on Monticello, and we just on a whim decided, let's pull this footage.
We see Taylor's rental car with a bullet hole in the front of it driving outbound Monticello. And then coming back within about 20 minutes.
And we tried to create a map of how far can you get from this camera box, drive 10 minutes away, and drive 10 minutes back. And with that, we decided to organize a multi-jurisdictional search party. We started calling in other assets from the state. We had drones that were up. We had divers dredging through some of the creeks.
We have boats, we have helicopters, we have planes. We have more people than I can even count.
On January 5th, investigator Nowlin makes a gruesome discovery.
The search team had checked off all of the areas that they were designated to search. So I just followed Shavers Creek. I pulled up there and I looked down and see a trash bag with what looked like a body in it.
After over 2 weeks of searching, investigators have just discovered the body of Terrell Sims in an embankment.
Because it was so cold and the creek was so shallow, it actually preserved his body very well.
There were still a lot of features that were still evident. Tattoos could still be seen, and we can still make out that, yes, that is Terrell.
Once the body is recovered, officers are able to make a positive identification while they await autopsy results. For Terrell's loved ones, the news is devastating.
I've been crying and going through the emotions before because I already felt like he was gone. So when I heard that, it was like I was numb.
I'm glad they found him, rather than them not finding him at all. It was emotional, but at the same time, was a little bit of justice.
Later that day, Taylor Wardlaw is arrested and charged with murder.
When we arrested her, she had been on the phone. All she did was just say, I'm gonna have to call you back. She knew the game was up at that point.
Taylor immediately asks for a lawyer.
Do you wish to talk to us?
Yeah, but I still want a lawyer because I don't know why I'm here.
Okay. So you want a lawyer?
Mm-hmm.
On January 5th, 2022, a body that was believed to be the victim was located in Shavers Creek.
He's dead?
While Taylor is held in custody, investigators proceed to search the home for any evidence of a struggle.
There was a gun box for a 9mm Ruger in a safe in the house, but the gun was unaccounted for.
There was one swab from the living room door frame that presumptively tested positive for blood that came back to Terrell Sims' profile.
While investigators make plans to speak to Eddie Brown, the medical examiner's autopsy report gives them an idea of what happened in the apartment.
Once the autopsy is conducted, it gives us an estimate about how long he's been deceased, which had been, at this point, roughly 2 weeks. It tells us he's been shot 4 times. At least one of those shots was in the back.
The projectiles that were collected were consistent with being fired from a 9mm.
It's possible that the first shots were to the front, but somebody that is running away, there's no justification to shoot them in the back.
All of that just goes to show a cover-up of a killing versus if it was self-defense.
In the days that follow, 30-year-old Eddie Youngsta Brown is apprehended and questioned by police.
Eddie was nervous. He knew that he didn't kill Terrell. He didn't want to go down for that.
He did provide a statement, eventually admitting what his role was in this, which was assisting Taylor in putting the body from the home into the trunk of the car and then removing the monitor and assisting her with dumping the body into the creek.
Based off of our interview with him, we were confident that we had enough evidence to get a conviction for accessory after the fact to the murder. So we ended up charging him with that.
Eddie is released on bond while prosecutors prep the case for trial.
While waiting for trial, we're starting to get back some of the results from the forensic exams that we've done, specifically on the cell phones.
Taylor's phone records reveal a woman consumed by jealousy and thoughts of murder.
This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice. She had been contemplating this for a while.
When prosecutors review the evidence, witness statement, and video surveillance footage, it's clear to them Taylor Wardlaw conspired to kill her boyfriend, Terrell Sims. The final piece of the puzzle is motive, which her cell phone records provide.
We started to get back text messages, emails, different exchanges between Taylor and Eddie. And what we come to learn is there was a relationship going on between Taylor and Eddie. She was planning to, in some capacity, leave Terrell for Eddie.
Taylor might have been cheating with another man, but that didn't mean she could handle the thought of Terrell with another woman.
The only motive that we could clearly see was just her anger towards him that she thought he was cheating on her. She had been texting him in the days leading up about why he wasn't coming home and where was he and who was he with.
Everything that we gathered from her phone, it was just, she was jealous. If I can't have you, nobody can.
To the prosecution, Taylor was a powder keg waiting to explode. And it finally happened on December 20th.
She was calling him over and over and over that night. I'm sure that her rage was building over the course of those hours.
In her text messages, there's no outright premeditation being said, but it's the reading between the lines.
She's texting Eddie while this is all going on, saying that she thinks he's out cheating on her. He finally came home around 3:30, and then there's no phone activity for about 33 minutes.
We'll never truly know what happened that night. My best working theory is an argument broke out between him and Taylor. Taylor could have started it because of her insecurities and worries about his infidelity. I think something just kind of broke inside her mind. So we believe Taylor snapped. She pulled out a gun and shot him. She obviously had a plan because she knew to go immediately to Eddie. I think that she had just had enough.
After she convinced Eddie to help her get rid of Terrell's body, Taylor came up with a cover story and reported him missing.
I think it's really crazy how she killed him, disposed of him, and then helped everybody look for his body. That's just next level evil.
Taylor spends the next 2 years in jail awaiting trial.
It was very obvious in this case that they were going to go the route of self-defense, considering that he was already on an ankle monitor for allegedly assaulting her a year and a half prior. But if this was truly someone that she was scared of, then why would you call him so many times that night?
In an unexpected turn of events, the case never makes it to court. On March 25, 2024, Taylor cuts a deal with prosecutors and pleads guilty to voluntary manslaughter. She's sentenced to 20 years in prison.
I felt like the time they gave Taylor wasn't enough. I felt like justice wasn't served enough for him.
I thank God that she did plead guilty. It's not like I was happy, but I know God has the last say so.
She didn't have to do what she did. Regardless, she can't see her kids, and they'll be adults by the time she come out. So whether it was justice or not, there's losses in both places.
Terrell, he was a good person. I mean, he might not have been perfect, but if he can do anything to help anybody, that's what Terrell would do.
I would miss his laughs, his random text messages, sending me pictures of his kids, joking. We was robbed of more memories, more time.
Happen. The judicial decision, in a profoundly bewildering turn, inexplicably placed young Bill and Joseph, the beloved sons of the brutally murdered Gail, and her allegedly complicit ex-husband Richard, directly under the legal care of Richard and Deborah, their mother's accused murderers. This was not merely an act of profound injustice. It was a cruel, almost theatrical, irony that forced the victims' traumatized children to reside under the same roof as the individuals, believed to be directly responsible for their mother's violent death. The psychological impact of such a placement is unimaginable for developing minds. For young Joseph, this mandated placement was nothing short of a living nightmare made terrifyingly real, a shocking reversal of the safety, emotional warmth, and normalcy he had just begun, tentatively, to find in his grandparent home. Richard being the natural father, they went to live with Richard and Debbie, completely believing that Debbie had killed my mom. The psychological burden inflicted upon a child forced cohabit, day after day, with individuals he profoundly and logically believed were responsible for his mother's violent demise, is utterly unimaginable, a torment designed to shatter the fragile foundations of a child's trust. The fear he experienced was primal, raw, and entirely rational, a desperate cry from the core of his being. Now I'm living with her. I know that my life's probably in danger, too. This acute, existential dread speaks volumes about Deborah's terrifying persona, her manipulative influence over Richard, and the deep-seated fear she actively inspired, even in innocent children who instinctively recognized danger. Gail's parents, Frank and Jackie, seeing the devastating emotional and undoubtedly psychological toll this placement was taking on their grandsons, fought with fierce, unwavering determination and every ounce of their being to extract them from this manifestly dangerous and abusive environment. My grandparents knew that Bill and Joe were being mistreated when they were in Richard and Deb's care, and they were doing everything they could to get custody of them. Their unwavering love, their profound sense of moral justice, and their relentless legal efforts ultimately prevailed, securing legal custody of their traumatized grandsons. Gail's parents ultimately prevail in the custody battle. This hard-won victory, though purchased at immense emotional cost, provided a desperately needed sanctuary, a haven of security and unconditional love, finally allowing the traumatized boys to begin the slow, arduous, and immensely courageous process of healing from the double trauma of loss and betrayal. We moved to Baton Rouge and started to live with my grandparents, which was just life-changing because now it's the first time that we've had some sense of normalcy. Since my mom was killed, this profound act of familial love, protection, and uncompromising ethical conduct stood as an eloquent testament to the enduring power of familial bonds, a resilience that even the darkest and most calculated evil could not ultimately sever. Meanwhile, the prosecution team continued to grapple with a significant and politically charged administrative roadblock: the steadfast and unyielding refusal of the county coroner to reverse his initial erroneous ruling that Gail's death was a suicide, despite the burgeoning, compelling, and ever-growing evidence unequivocally pointing towards homicide. This singular official declaration, stemming directly from his initial assessment, became an immovable and immensely frustrating barrier, an exercise in administrative stubbornness that directly and dangerously impeded the relentless pursuit of genuine justice. The prosecution, however, is still facing a major roadblock. Despite the evidence collected, the county coroner will not reverse his ruling that Gail's death was a suicide. The crucial distinction between the cause of death, drowning, which was undisputed, and the manner of death, homicide versus suicide, is legally critical and often the linchpin of a murder trial. We knew that the cause of death was drowning, but we didn't have conclusive proof that the manner of death was homicide. Without the coroner's official change of ruling, elevating the manner of death to homicide, the prosecution's ability to secure capital murder charges and subsequent conviction was severely hampered, lacking the formal medical determination crucial for such high-stakes legal proceedings. A major exacerbating factor in this agonizing predicament was the unfortunate and critical absence of a thorough post-mortem examination and autopsy conducted during the initial, crucial phase of the investigation. She was buried without an autopsy. An autopsy, a detailed and meticulous forensic examination of the body, is an indispensable tool in suspicious death investigations, often providing crucial physical evidence, biological samples, and definitive clarity on the precise cause and, most importantly, the manner of death. Without this initial examination, critical forensic opportunities for evidence collection and scientific analysis were irrevocably lost in the immediate aftermath of Gail's death. Recognizing this profound and glaring deficit, and understanding its implications for a capital murder trial, the prosecution grasped that to definitively prove homicide beyond a reasonable doubt, they had only one recourse, however difficult and emotionally fraught: the process of exhuming Gail's body from its resting place. One of the next things that we did was to get an order to have Gail's body exhumed and do an autopsy. The exhumation, a deeply solemn, highly sensitive, and meticulously orchestrated procedure, was ultimately undertaken with a specific and urgent forensic goal: to search for any chemical residue, particularly sedative or incapacitating agents, that might definitively confirm Vicky Mordecai's testimony regarding Gail's chemical incapacitation prior to the drowning. One thing that we wanted to know was whether or not we could prove that she had chloroform in her system, but that was not successful. Unfortunately, the inexorable passage of over 8 months since her death, coupled with the natural, immutable processes of decomposition, had taken its toll, significantly limiting the retrospective scope of forensic analysis. We couldn't prove or disprove that because the body was too decomposed. While this outcome represented a regrettable setback, eliminating a potentially vital and definitive piece of chemical evidence, it did not entirely derail or halt the investigation. The prosecution's unwavering resolve remained unbroken, realizing that while direct chemical proof was now tragically elusive, other astute forensic interpretations of the physical evidence could still unequivocally validate their theory of deliberate, cold-blooded homicide, providing the missing scientific pillar to their legal argument. The truth would emerge, even if the preferred pathway was blocked. The expert's eye, unveiling the unseen truth through forensic genius. Facing the dual and formidable challenges of an intransigent and uncooperative local coroner, stubbornly clinging to an erroneous initial ruling, and the harsh forensic limitations imposed by the natural processes of decomposition, the prosecution team, with admirable strategic foresight, wisely turned to an undisputed and internationally recognized authority in the highly specialized field of forensic pathology. The only way we were going to get this case is to call an outside pathologist. Their determined search for unparalleled expertise and definitive answers led them to a true giant in the realm of forensic science. My office hired Dr. Michael Biden, who was a premier forensic pathologist in the country. Dr. Biden, a luminary whose sterling reputation, vast experience, and extraordinary insights preceded him, brought to the increasingly complex case an unparalleled wealth of knowledge, decades of experience, and a remarkable, almost preternatural capacity for meticulous observation, incisive critical thinking, and unflinching deductive reasoning. His presence alone signaled a new, decisive phase of the investigation. The lead investigator, a detective whose own profound instincts had consistently and stubbornly pointed to foul play rather than suicide, meticulously presented Dr. Biden with the entire complex narrative of Gail's death, recounting every known detail, every witness statement, and every agonizing unanswered question gathered over preceding months. I tell him this whole story, and it was like he knew exactly where I needed to go. Dr. Biden's unparalleled expertise, honed by countless cases and a deep scientific understanding, allowed him to immediately discern crucial details that had been previously overlooked, dismissed, or tragically misinterpreted by less experienced eyes. He said, "Go get your autopsy pictures," and so I did. Upon receiving and meticulously reviewing the grim, yet forensically invaluable images captured at the crime scene during the initial investigation, his focus was immediate, precise, and unerring, a laser-like concentration on specific, telling anomalies, and immediately he just zones in on this little bruise on her ankle. This seemingly minor bruise, initially cataloged but then, unfortunately, dismissed as inconsequential or accidental in the rushing confusion of the initial investigation, now took on a profound, chilling significance under Dr. Biden's scrutinizing and expert gaze. It was a silent witness, a tiny yet eloquent piece of evidence, patiently waiting for the right, discerning interpreter to understand its hidden story. Dr. Biden's meticulous analysis transcended mere superficial observation. It was a brilliant, scientifically grounded forensic reconstruction of the tragic events, meticulously based on established physiological and pathological principles. He knew exactly what had happened, but he said, once you're unconscious, then you're not struggling anymore. This fundamental physiological insight provided a crucial and compelling explanation for the initial lack of major, overt physical struggle at the scene, eloquently reconciling a major discrepancy that had plagued the superficial suicide theory. He then, with scientific clarity, elucidated the chilling mechanics of the drowning, painting a precise and horrifying picture of exactly how the final, fatal act was carried out. They could take her unconscious body and pick her up by her ankles, place her in a body of water, and all they had to do was to get the water level over her nose. This chillingly efficient and highly deliberate method of drowning an already incapacitated, unconscious individual was entirely consistent with all the physical evidence. The perplexingly shallow water in the tub, the curious absence of struggle marks often associated with active drowning, and the distinct forensic nature of the drowning itself. It ingeniously transformed the scene's apparent simplicity and neatness from an indicator of suicide into a stark and undeniable signature of sophisticated, calculated, and cold-blooded murder. The puzzle pieces, once scattered and seemingly contradictory, now clicked into a terrifyingly clear picture of homicide. Furthermore, Dr. Biden noticed another subtle, yet absolutely critical detail meticulously revealed in the original autopsy pictures. Specific, discernible abrasions on Gail's delicate nose. Dr. Biden noticed abrasions on her nose, which is consistent with a rough cloth like a towel being held over her nose. It was used to make her unconscious this minute, yet profoundly significant. Forensic observation perfectly and powerfully corroborated Vicky Mordecai's earlier testimony about Gail being precisely incapacitated with a rag soaked with something over her mouth and nose, confirming the use of a chemical agent or forceful suppression. The physical evidence, meticulously interpreted by a leading and globally respected expert, aligned with astounding and undeniable precision with the informant's account, creating an absolutely cohesive, unshakable, and undeniable narrative of premeditated murder. The ultimate conclusion, articulated by Dr. Biden, presented with the full weight of his scientific authority, was unequivocal, forceful, and deeply resonant, serving as a profound validation. It eloquently echoed the powerful, intuitive instincts of the experienced patrol officer who had first questioned the suicide narrative. At the crime scene, Dr. Biden said, "This is not suicide. This is not an accident. This is a homicide." His authoritative, unshakable declaration, backed by an unparalleled understanding of forensic science, human anatomy, and the physiological responses to trauma, provided the definitive medical and scientific proof that the prosecution team so desperately needed. To decisively move forward with capital murder charges, he made the same statement I did. You can't commit suicide in shallow water. This expert testimony, rigorously rooted in unassailable scientific principles, decades of extensive professional experience, and an acute attention to often missed details, was a decisive, crushing, and utterly irrefutable blow against the county coroner's persistent, ego-driven, and tragically flawed initial ruling. The scientific truth, spoken with clarity, now stood in stark contrast to institutional obstinacy. Despite Dr. Biden's unassailable findings and the undeniable clarity of his expert opinion, the local coroner, with astonishing and perplexing stubbornness, remained unyielding in his initial position. It didn't change the coroner's mind. He took the position that it was still a suicide and continued. To do that, the coroner's refusal to concede, even in the face of overwhelming and authoritative expert medical evidence, powerfully highlighted a deeply troubling adherence to his initial, unchallenged judgment, perhaps driven by deeply ingrained professional pride, a fear of admitting error, or an unfortunate lack of willingness to revisit initial conclusions in a high-profile case. He took the position that he was a coroner and that was the gospel, and there was no getting around it. This bureaucratic intransigence, frustrating, ethically questionable, and frankly obstructive, risked undermining the very core of justice. Yet, the investigators, steadfast in their moral conviction, held firm to their principles. To me, the victim was way more important than his ego. The prosecution now unequivocally possessed the irrefutable scientific evidence they required, and their unwavering hope rested firmly on Dr. Biden's powerful expert opinion being potent enough, compelling enough, and undeniable enough to sway a jury, ultimately overcoming the local coroner's continuing, and by now, almost laughably isolated, dissent. The truth, meticulously uncovered through perseverance and brilliance, was finally ready for its long-awaited and desperately needed day in court. The long road to justice, trials, pleas, and the unraveling of deceit. On October 10th, 1994, more than 2.5 agonizing years after Gail Mosby was brutally found dead in her bathtub, the wheels of justice, though slow and arduous, finally began their inexorable turn. The joint trial of Deborah Mosby, Richard Mosby, and Billy Ray Ford commenced, a culmination of tireless, often clandestine investigative work, unshakable perseverance, and an unwavering, almost spiritual, determination to uncover the truth. The prosecution team, spearheaded by Tommy and his dedicated legal cohort, adopted a shrewd and strategically sound approach to the intricately complex capital murder case. Tommy and I decided that we would try the conspiracy to commit capital murder first. This deliberate strategic choice allowed them to meticulously lay out the intricate network of malicious planning, deliberate intent, and shocking collusion that inextricably underscore the entire murderous plot, thereby firmly establishing the broad canvas of the crime before prosecuting the ultimate, specific act of murder itself. This methodical approach aimed to demonstrate premeditation and a shared criminal enterprise. As the state systematically presented its formidable body of evidence for the conspiracy, charges, which included the meticulously detailed phone records, the terrifying yet brave informant testimony, the chilling and independently gathered wiretap recordings, and Dr. Biden's powerful forensic reconstruction, the psychological pressure on the defendants became immense, almost unbearable, under the overwhelming and undeniable weight of the rapidly accumulating and interlocking facts. One of the accused, facing the bleak and terrifying prospect of severe and life-altering consequences, made a profound and pivotal decision. He decided to turn against the others, to confess and implicate his co-conspirators. It's not looking good to Billy Ray. The confessed hitman, Billy Ray Ford, a cold pragmatist, acutely recognizing the precariousness of his legal position and the overwhelming, inescapable nature of the evidence mounted against him, sought a desperately needed avenue for a more lenient judicial outcome, a last-ditch attempt at self-preservation. So his lawyer comes over to the counsel table and says, "My client wants a deal, and he will agree to testify against Richard and Debbie, which is golden." This was a decisive, long-awaited breakthrough that prosecutors had painstakingly worked towards, strategically maneuvering to achieve. An insider, a direct, intimate participant in the very act of murder, now willing to fully, unequivocally, and unvarnishedly expose the complete, intricate truth of the entire conspiracy. Such a confession, coming from within the criminal circle itself, is the undeniable holy grail of prosecutorial efforts, an unparalleled opportunity to dismantle the defense's narrative with an eyewitness account. Ford's statement, delivered with the stark gravitas of a man confessing to the ultimate crime, from a witness stand, served as the ultimate, definitive unmasking. It unequivocally settled, once and for all, the long-standing question of who truly masterminded Gale's brutal murder. His chilling, detailed testimony left no lingering room for doubt about the hierarchy of malevolence within the conspiracy. He actually dealt with Deborah, who retained him, and she was the one he was talking to. This direct and explicit testimony irrevocably implicated Deborah Mosby as the undisputed primary orchestrator, the insidious and cruel force who not only initiated the contact but also conceived the core of the plot, relentlessly drove its planning, and definitively directed its cold execution. Richard, Gale's ex-husband, was powerfully depicted not as the initial instigator or the driving force, but rather as a deeply complicit, yet seemingly subservient figure, operating significantly under Deborah's dominant, manipulative, and ultimately corrupting influence. Richard apparently pretty much did what Deborah told him to do. This damning testimony, originating directly from one of the participants in the murder itself, was the critical turning point in the complex legal battle, fundamentally solidifying the prosecution's capital murder case and irrevocably clarifying the distinct, horrifying roles played by each individual within the sinister conspiracy. With Billy Ray Ford now firmly secured as a cooperating state's witness, agreeing to bravely testify against Deborah and Richard Mosby, the couple's cases were strategically and legally severed. They would now face separate, individual trials for capital murder, a crucial prosecutorial maneuver that allowed for a more focused, precise, and targeted presentation of evidence specifically against each defendant's distinct role and specific culpability. In May 1995, the judicial proceedings against Richard Mosby officially commenced. Faced with the overwhelming and undeniable body of evidence, which included the chilling, first-hand testimony of the man he himself had explicitly ushered into Gail's home to commit murder. Richard, confronted by the inescapable truth, made a momentous and legally significant decision. Richard decided to plead guilty to murder. This profound plea of guilt, an explicit admission of his culpability in Gail's death, meant that the death penalty, a potential and indeed very real legal consequence for a capital murder conviction in Mississippi, was explicitly and definitively taken off the table, preventing a trial on that matter. So, of course, the death penalty was off the table at that point. For Gail's children, this moment, while a legal resolution, was an emotional maelstrom, a complex, deeply confusing interplay of profound anguish and an almost unexpected sense of relief. It was a confusing time emotionally because as hateful and as angry as I was, the sense of relief was just overbearing, the crushing, undeniable reality of their father's guilt, the definitive and explicit acknowledgement of his unforgivable role in their beloved mother's violent death brought a measure of painful yet vital closure. It was very important to know that he pleaded guilty. His admission, though agonizing and psychologically devastating for his children, brought a clear, albeit tragic and permanent, answer to a haunting, pervasive question that had tormented their young lives for years. With Richard's guilty plea for murder firmly secured, prosecutors then turned their full, unwavering, and laser-like attention to the woman they conclusively believed was the true, malicious architect of the entire crime, the malevolent, driving force behind the entire horrific plot. The mastermind is Deborah Mosby, and we know her to be, however you define it, evil. This stark, unambiguous characterization, evil, while undeniably strong, powerfully reflected the profound depth of her calculated cruelty, her remorseless manipulation, and her relentless, almost pathological animosity towards Gail, whom she seemed determined to erase from existence. Debbie was the catalyst of this whole thing. Her actions were not the result of impulsive rage. They were meticulously planned, deeply vindictive, consistently sustained, and utterly devoid of genuine human remorse or empathy. Deborah's capital murder trial officially began in December 1995, more than 3 grueling and agonizing years after Gail's life was brutally and prematurely extinguished. The prosecution's case was built on an unassailable foundation of compelling and interconnected evidence, buttressed by 2 critical, stellar witnesses whose credibility and expertise were, for different reasons, undeniable. Billy Ray Ford, the confessed hitman, provided the chilling, step-by-step insider account of the plot's cold execution, detailing the very mechanics of Gail's demise. And Dr. Michael Biden, the nationally acclaimed and globally recognized forensic pathologist, presented the irrefutable scientific proof that unequivocally transformed Gail's death from a suspected, easily dismissible suicide into a clear, meticulously proven, and undeniable homicide. You can't discredit Dr. Biden. You can't do it. He's too good. His expert, methodical, and unflappable testimony was unshakable, scientifically unimpeachable, and meticulously presented, providing the definitive, unchallengeable explanation of precisely how Gail had been murdered. He put the case together for us. His forensic brilliance was the undeniable truth-teller, definitively silencing all lingering doubt regarding the manner of death. Throughout her trial, Deborah Mosby strategically maintained her stoic silence, electing not to take the stand in her own defense. This is a constitutionally protected legal tactic, as a defendant cannot be legally compelled to incriminate themselves. However, this strategic silence also left state prosecutors free to skillfully and convincingly speculate on the deep-seated, insidious motives that drove her to orchestrate such a brutal act, presenting them to the jury as the logical, chillingly rational underpinnings of her profound malevolence, while her palpable, venomous animosity towards Gail was overtly evident and served as a powerful emotional motive, The clear financial aspect was also a strong, tangible, and demonstrably significant driver for her actions. If Gail died, then child support would stop, and that Social Security would start for the boys, which I believe at that time was going to be $1,300 a month. This clear financial gain, coupled with virulent, irrational hatred and a deep-seated, controlling desire to utterly eradicate Gail from Richard's life, his thoughts, and his obligations, presented a potent, if chillingly mercenary, combination of motives. My impression was that she just didn't like Gail Mosby. In fact, I think she hated her, and she just decided that her life would be better without her, and it was worth having her killed. The prosecution argued powerfully and with undeniable conviction that Deborah's actions were a horrific fusion of cold, calculating financial opportunism and pure, unadulterated, unbridled malice, a profound and twisted desire to eliminate an inconvenient rival and a perceived, ongoing burden, ultimately leading her to contract the cold-blooded killing of Gail. The jury, having meticulously listened to all the presented evidence, scrutinized every testimony, and deliberated carefully over the extensive facts, ultimately found Deborah Mosby guilty on all charges. However, in the subsequent crucial penalty phase, they became irrevocably deadlocked on the solemn recommendation for the death penalty, unable to reach a unanimous decision. Consequently, the presiding judge, following legal precedent, instead sentenced her to a term of life imprisonment. For Gail's devastated family, particularly her children, the conviction and sentencing of Deborah, whom they justly perceived as the manipulative, cruel mastermind, brought a powerful, long-awaited, and profoundly cathartic sense of resolution, and finally, justice served. It was the final nail in the coffin in the sense of, wow, she's where she belongs. She's in prison, and now she can't hurt anybody else. The hard-won triumph of justice, achieved through immense dedication, unwavering resilience, and a relentless pursuit of truth against formidable odds, provided a powerful and profound affirmation that even the most cunning, insidious, and cold-blooded evil would, eventually, face an unwavering reckoning and accountability. It was a testament to the uncompromising efforts of those who refused to let Gail Mosby's story end as a mere forgotten statistic. The aftermath, the enduring legacy of love, resilience, and unwavering spirit, the years that inexorably followed the momentous convictions, though bringing a measure of vital justice and an opportunity for gradual, arduous healing, also delivered their own unique, deeply painful challenges and, unfortunately, renewed heartaches for Gail Mosby's enduring family. The grim, complex realities of the American penal system, where the phrase life in prison can sometimes be a fluid, subjectively interpreted concept rather than an absolute, would prove to be another difficult and emotionally jarring lesson in the complexities of justice. In 2007, both Billy Ray Ford, the confessed hitman, and Richard Mosby, Gail's ex-husband and a key co-conspirator, were quietly released from prison, having served their respective sentences according to parole board's decisions. Then, in 2021, more than 2 full decades after Gail's brutal murder, Deborah Mosby herself was also unexpectedly released, having served 26 years of her life sentence. For Gail's children, Bill and Joseph, who had lived with the profound, shattering trauma of their mother's murder and had fought so long and so courageously for true justice, this series of releases was a profound, deeply painful, and bitterly disappointing development. A stark reminder that the judicial pronouncement of life in jail does not always unequivocally equate to a sentence to be served for the duration of one's natural life. One thing I learned from Debbie's conviction and from my dad's sentencing is that life in jail doesn't mean life in jail. The raw news of their release, particularly Deborah's, delivered a significant and painful emotional blow, an agonizing, huge gut punch. For those who had carried the unbearable burden of their grief and the searing memory of Gail's violent death for such a long, arduous period. It's a huge gut punch knowing that they're out of prison. It felt, for a moment, as though the justice they had so arduously fought for had been partially undone, that the triumph had a bitter aftertaste. Despite the renewed anger, the deep-seated frustration, and the reawakened pain caused by these releases, the enduring and luminous legacy of Gail Mosby, meticulously preserved, passionately upheld, and lovingly reinforced by the unwavering love and steadfast moral guidance of her heroic parents. Frank and Jackie ultimately provided her sons, Bill and Joseph, with an inner strength, a profound sense of purpose, and an unbreakable resilience that transcended the bitterness and profound resentment. But I'll say this based on how my grandparents raised us. It's made the anger that we had towards them. It's made it small because what we have, it's way more important. The primary focus of their lives, through their wise and nurturing grandparents' unwavering efforts, powerfully and deliberately shifted from the all-consuming darkness of their parents' abhorrent actions and the perpetrator's freedom to the enduring, vibrant light of the loving family that remained, a powerful testament to resilience, an unshakable belief in goodness, and the transformative power of a truly loving and ethical upbringing. It eloquently demonstrated their extraordinary capacity to rise above victimhood, to choose meaning and healing over festering malice. The profound and unbreakable bond that flourished and strengthened between the two brothers, Bill and Joseph, forged indelibly in the crucible of shared trauma and unspeakable tragedy, and nurtured tirelessly by their devoted grandparents, subsequently became a living, breathing testament to their mother's most cherished values. What keeps my mom alive to me today is a relationship that I have with my brother because she really instilled in us a sense of family, and we never let that go. Gail's fundamental and timeless lessons of familial love, unwavering loyalty, steadfast support, and indomitable perseverance continue to resonate deeply and profoundly, inextricably shaping the resilient, compassionate, and purpose-driven men her sons ultimately became. Joseph, with an enduring and heartfelt commitment, now carries her cherished memory and legacy forward into the future, ensuring her indomitable spirit lives on vibrantly in the next generation, in his own children. I like to remind my own boys that I was a product of one of the greatest mothers this world could have ever had. So I want them to be able to understand that even though she's not around, she's still all with them. This powerful generational legacy ensures that Gail Mosby's life, rich in love and purpose, continues to touch and inspire, a shining beacon of unconditional affection that bravely shines far beyond the enduring shadow of murder. The profoundly disturbing narrative of Gail Mosby's murder serves as a chilling and unforgettable reminder of the insidious and corrosive nature of human malice, and how seemingly mundane domestic conflicts, when allowed to fester, fueled by deep-seated resentment, obsessive control, and a terrifying lack of empathy, can spiral catastrophically into cold-blooded, premeditated murder. It lays bare the unsettling reality of individuals like Deborah Mosby, whose toxic blend of unbridled resentment, absolute and unwavering control, and a shocking, pathological lack of genuine empathy can ultimately culminate in the most extreme, unimaginable acts of violence. Her casual and chilling belief, as revealed in the prosecution's theory, that life would simply be better without her, so starkly, self-servingly articulated, stands as a chilling testament to a mind profoundly devoid of fundamental human compassion, a mind terrifyingly willing to extinguish another life for mere personal convenience, perceived gain, and the satisfaction of absolute control. The subtle wit and gentle satire woven into this analysis here points not at the tragedy itself, which is sacred in its sorrow, but at the astonishing, almost comically petty, yet ultimately terrifying self-centeredness of such a criminal, viewing another precious human being's existence as nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle to her carefully constructed, egocentric universe. This poignant and complex case also stands as a powerful and enduring tribute to the tireless, often thankless, and frequently unheralded efforts of dedicated law enforcement officers and unwavering legal professionals who steadfastly refuse to accept an easy, convenient, or superficially presented answer. The profound, old police gut feeling, the meticulous, almost obsessive attention to a minute, yet critically significant detail, like a cracked picture frame, the unwavering conviction and profound professional courage demonstrated repeatedly in the face of an obstinate institutional authority figure, and the brilliant, transformative, and scientifically grounded forensic work of experts like Dr. Michael Biden, all synergistically converged with remarkable precision to peel back the intricate, deceptive layers of deceit and bravely expose the brutal, unvarnished truth. It eloquently and powerfully demonstrates that justice, though sometimes agonizingly delayed, fraught with immense challenges, and marked by painful compromises, can ultimately and truly prevail, driven by the relentless dedication and profound moral fortitude of those who courageously choose to speak for the voiceless victims, ensuring their truth is heard. Ultimately, Gail Mosby's profoundly human story is a vital, unforgettable, and deeply humanistic lesson, etched indelibly into the annals of criminal psychology, astute investigative triumph, and legal perseverance. It unequivocally underscores the critical importance of being vigilant, of paying acute attention, and of proactively listening to the quiet, often overlooked, alarms that subtly sound in the margins of everyday life, the friend's unsettling premonition, the child's intuitive and insistent disbelief, the experienced officer's subtle, yet profoundly persistent, professional instinct. It is a compelling and inspiring narrative of good, resiliently and ultimately triumphing over insidious evil, not through some sensationalized or cinematic explosion of drama, but through the slow, deliberate, often frustrating, yet ultimately effective, relentless grind of meticulous detective work, robust legal process, and an unwavering, unbreakable commitment to uncovering the truth. This comprehensive story serves as an invaluable educational beacon, urging us all to recognize the subtle yet potent signs of manipulative, psychopathic personalities, to extend unwavering support, compassion, and protection to victims tragically entangled in domestic conflicts, and, most profoundly, to never, ever underestimate the enduring power of familial love, human resilience, and the relentless, often arduous, pursuit of profound, restorative justice. Gail Mosby's vibrant spirit, indelibly defined by her unwavering devotion to her beloved family and her innately compassionate heart, lives on, a vivid and inspiring testament to a life exceptionally well-lived and a powerful legacy of unconditional love that even the darkest and most calculated evil could not ultimately diminish, extinguish, or erase from the collective memory. The profound lessons derived from her life and her tragic, yet resolved, death resonate, guiding us all towards greater empathy, sharper discernment, and a renewed, robust faith in the inherent human capacity for genuine justice. The deceptive tranquility of Sunday afternoon, May 24th, 1992, in Jackson, Mississippi, veiled a horror about to be unveiled. A simple family arrangement, the routine return of two young boys to their mother's care, would unexpectedly plunge into a labyrinthine narrative of death, deceit, and a chilling vendetta that threatened to consume even more lives. What first appeared as a personal tragedy, an apparent suicide shrouded in melancholic silence and reinforced by superficial observations, was, in fact, the meticulously calculated execution of a vibrant life, carefully masked by those who orchestrated it with a cold, unforgiving hand. As a criminal psychology analyst and a seasoned detective novelist, I find such cases particularly compelling. They lay bare the intricate workings of the human mind, showcasing both its profound capacity for insidious evil and its equally remarkable ability to relentlessly pursue and uncover the truth, no matter how deeply buried. The unanswered door, a mother's absence, and a child's intuition shattered. The afternoon sun, warm and typical for late spring in the southern heartland, cast long, elongated shadows across the quiet residential streets of Jackson. Richard Mosby, accompanied by his new wife, Deborah, was fulfilling what should have been a routine, unremarkable obligation, dropping off his two young sons, 7-year-old Joseph and 9-year-old Bill, at the home of their mother, Gail Mosby. The boys had spent a pleasant weekend under their father and stepmother's care, a common arrangement following Gail and Richard's divorce. The established schedule dictated their return to their mother precisely at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yet, as the vehicle idled outside the familiar dwelling, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor of unease began to ripple through the seemingly normal Sunday, an invisible foreboding that would soon crystallize in profound dread. Joseph, still perceiving the world through the relatively unclouded, trusting lens of childhood innocence, recounted the unsettling prelude to what should have been a joyous reunion with his beloved mother. We knocked on the door, and my mom didn't answer. This deviation from Gail's predictable and punctual nature was immediately striking, an initial crack in the familiar patterns of their lives. Further disquiet manifested itself in an unexpected physical barrier, a detail that resonated deeply with the boy's nascent sense of wrongness. Doors locked, and it never locked. This small detail, seemingly inconsequential to a child, immediately registered as an anomaly, a breach of her established routine. Gail, known for her meticulousness and order, rarely varied from her household habits. Joseph's young mind, naturally resistant to processing anything profoundly sinister, struggled valiantly to reconcile these conflicting realities. I was trying to figure out what's going on, because my mom's car's right there. The unmistakable presence of Gail's vehicle in the driveway, a tangible indicator of her immediate proximity, only deepened perplexing mystery, suggesting she was home yet unresponsive. I'm so young, I'm not thinking any things. You don't go there when you're that age. His undeveloped understanding of the world's darker, more brutal corners temporarily shielded him from true, terrifying implications of the silence. However, the slightly older and more intuitive Bill, with his additional 2 years of life experience, sensed a deeper, more ominous undercurrent, a premonition that transcended mere worry. But I got the sense that Bill understood something was wrong. The unspoken anxieties conveyed by an older child, grappling with nascent fears that outstrip his ability to articulate them, often speak volumes more powerfully than any uttered words. Their shared unspoken sense of foreboding settled like a cold stone in their young hearts. Richard's wife, Deborah, perhaps attempting to project an air of normalcy or, more sinisterly, feigning a benign disinterest in the face of the growing anomaly, scribbled a note and conspicuously left it on Gail's car, a conventional message of their visit. Before departing, they extended a seemingly casual request to the next-door neighbor, a kindly man intimately familiar with the gentle rhythms and neighborly customs of their quiet, residential street. They asked him to call if Gail made contact. However, as the clock inexorably ticked past 6 o'clock, the neighbor's initial compliance, his promise to relay a message, transformed into a palpable and deeply rooted concern. He knew Gail Mosby. He understood her commitment, her steadfast reliability. The neighbor was concerned because Gail was very responsible. There was some reason why she would not be there. His conviction was not based on idle speculation or unfounded worry. It was rooted in years of observing Gail's impeccable character, a profound sense of unease, a premonition that transcended mere everyday worry, prompted him to act decisively. Equipped with a spare key, a practical relic of mutual trust and camaraderie that once characterized their friendly neighborhood, he unlocked Gail's front door and tentatively stepped into the unsettling stillness of her home, his heart undoubtedly pounding with a potent mixture of apprehension and the desperate hope that he would simply find her absent, perhaps running a last-minute errand. The interior of the house, upon his initial cautious inspection, presented a meticulously deceptive tableau of peace and undisturbed order. Everything seemed orderly in the house, which was consistent with the way she did things. She was apparently a neat housekeeper, but everything appeared to be in order. This detail, later dissected by trained investigative minds, would eventually be reinterpreted not as innocuous evidence of serene domesticity, but as a chilling, deliberate signature of absolute control, a carefully constructed illusion intended to mislead and conceal. Yet, this fragile facade of perfect normalcy was about to shatter with violent suddenness, revealing the brutal truth concealed beneath its pristine surface. The neighbor's anxious, deepening search inevitably led him down a short hallway and into the main bathroom, where the illusion of order disintegrated into an unspeakable, horrifying scene. He was horrified to find that she was in her bathtub and Gail Mosby was dead. The stark reality of the discovery, confronting him with visceral brutality, painted a grim, chilling picture that would haunt his memory. She was unclothed. Her body was in the bathtub, with her feet hanging outside the bathtub. Her head was still underwater. The scene, on its superficial surface, seemed to speak only of drowning, a death both tragic and profoundly solitary, perhaps even self-inflicted. She died from drowning. The initial, emotionally charged and often superficial assessment, made in the first moments of shock, left little room for other immediate interpretations. Steering minds toward a singular, sorrowful conclusion, there was no other explanation for it. In these fraught, initial moments, before forensic examination and logical deduction can truly begin, such an instinctive categorization of the incomprehensible is common, a deeply human attempt to categorize and contain unbearable reality. However, it is precisely in these initial, permeable moments that the crucial seeds of doubt are sometimes inadvertently sown, particularly for those with trained eyes and an innate understanding of human suffering. Gail's distraught neighbor, reeling from the traumatic and horrifying sight, immediately dialed 911, initiating the official cascade of emergency services, uniformed police officers, paramedics, and eventually the grim, methodical machinery of a formal criminal investigation. The clock had now begun to tick on a case far more complex than simple tragedy. First impressions, the allure of simplicity versus the whisper of doubt, discerning the lies. The rapid arrival of police officers and paramedics at Gail Mosby's residence, mere minutes after the frantic 911 call, introduced a structured, albeit somber and clinical, assessment to the unfolding tragedy. As a standard protocol in any unexplained death, law enforcement began by scrutinizing the immediate environment, systematically searching for any overt telltale signs that might contradict the apparent simplicity of the drowning scenario. When the police arrived, they noticed no sign of a struggle. They didn't see anything being disturbed. The absence of overturned furniture, scuffled rugs, broken items in the living areas, or any evidence of forced entry lent considerable initial weight to the preliminary assumption of A, self-inflicted death. This apparent lack of violent chaos, paradoxically, created an atmosphere of unsettling calm, suggesting an absence of a perpetrator. Adding to this impression, investigators discovered Gail's clothing meticulously arranged, a detail that initially seemed to fit the emerging narrative perfectly. They found her clothes had been folded and left by the bathtub. Such an act, often associated with individuals who make deliberate preparations for their final moments, typically contributes to a narrative of calculated self-harm, imbuing the scene with a grim sense of personal control over one's end. Further corroboration for the initial suicide theory appeared in the poignant form of Gail's private journal. They also found a journal. Its intimate pages offered a raw, vulnerable window into a mind grappling with inner turmoil, revealing a personal struggle that could, superficially, explain an act of despair. She had been having some problems with depression, The stark vulnerability and emotional pain expressed within its entries provided a potential, if heartbreaking, motive for an individual contemplating ending their own life. Fitting the psychological profile of a suicidal individual experiencing profound heartache, this introspective, psychological evidence was augmented by tangible indicators of professional medical intervention and treatment. Also, they did find some prescriptions. I can't specifically recall what they were, but the kinds of things you would expect somebody who had been depressed to have been prescribed. The presence of prescribed antidepressants or anxiolytics. Medications indicative of a professionally diagnosed and treated depressive condition further reinforce the developing narrative, connecting Gail's reported mental state to the scene. You put that package together, that kind of tips you over towards suicide. From a superficial or even clinically detached perspective, all the observable pieces seem to fit neatly, aligning to form a cohesive, albeit tragic, picture of a life voluntarily ended. However, a fundamental and inviolable principle of robust criminal investigation mandates a thorough, unbiased, and relentlessly skeptical evaluation before any definitive conclusion can be pronounced. Even as the tide of initial opinion swayed strongly towards suicide, the seasoned professionals on scene were bound by their training and experience to probe deeper, to challenge every assumption, and to critically examine every seemingly perfect piece of the puzzle. It was during this critical and meticulously observed phase that the fragile consensus began to visibly splinter, revealing a profound and undeniable dissonance thanks to the discerning and expert observations of a veteran patrol officer. That evening, I was just on active patrol, and I got the call of a deceased subject at that location. The officer, approaching the scene with professional detachment honed over years, initially cataloged the absence of overt indicators of foul play, aligning with the general impression of a peaceful, if tragic, death. There was no signs of any disturbance, any foul play. Yet, certain seemingly minor details registered as anomalous, gnawing at his veteran intuition with insistent unease. I did notice that one of her legs had a small bruise on the inside of her left ankle. A bruise, while superficially minor and easily dismissible, was fundamentally out of place in a context of peaceful, self-orchestrated drowning, subtly suggesting an unobserved struggle or manipulation of the body. More disturbing and directly contradictory were the specific observations related to the immediate cause of death itself, the grim final moments of Gail's life. I could tell there was frothing from the mouth, and there was a small amount of blood in the water, which would indicate the lungs were struggling for air. This was emphatically not the placid, passive surrender implied by a self-chosen, deliberate drowning. It was the agonizing, undeniable evidence of a desperate, violent struggle for breath, a body's primal refusal to succumb to suffocation. The simultaneous presence of both froth, often a sign of severe pulmonary edema indicative of acute struggle during near drowning, and a small amount of blood, potentially originating from burst capillaries in the lungs due to extreme, involuntary strain, spoke eloquently to a brutal, involuntary battle against submersion. Such biological responses betray a living, fighting entity, not a passive victim of self-destruction. To an experienced officer, a man who had witnessed a grim tableau of violent death countless times throughout his career, these seemingly minor discrepancies, the bruise, the frothing, the blood, coalesce into an undeniable and profound contradiction to the suicide narrative. The most salient, the most irrefutable detail, the one that screamed defiance to the suicide theory with unwavering physiological certainty, was the shockingly low level of water in the bathtub. The thing that got me is the fact that the water was shallow. This pivotal observation immediately triggered a deep, innate understanding of human physiology and the powerful, involuntary survival instincts deeply embedded within us all. Your body's not going to let you kill yourself drowning in shallow water. Your body's going to fight. It's not going to let you drown in inches of water. The primal, evolutionary drive to survive, an instinct infinitely more powerful than any conscious, momentary will to self-destruct, ensures that even in profound despair, a human body will instinctively thrash, gasp, and violently fight against suffocation, especially when escape is physically simple and immediately available in such shallow depths. To overcome this overwhelming instinct in such minimal water, where escape is effortless, necessitates an overwhelming external force or total, absolute incapacitation. The collective presence of the blood, the frothing, and most critically, the utterly insufficient level of water in the tub created a profound, unshakable dissonance with the presented narrative of suicide. The meticulous order of the room, previously supportive of self-harm, now felt artificially pristine, deliberately staged, an almost mocking attempt to hide a brutal truth, too ugly for the casual glance. It spoke of calculated malevolence, not despair. Normally, I probably would not have even called the homicide detectives out, but the fact that there was blood in the water, that there's just inches of water in the tub, I call a homicide. This definitive declaration was not merely a subjective gut feeling. It was professional deduction rooted in decades of observing the grim realities of violent death, a finely honed forensic intuition that recognized the distinct, immutable fingerprints of murder cunningly disguised as suicide. This experienced officer, courageously challenging the initial wave of opinion and boldly defying the easy, convenient answer, drew a clear and morally unequivocal line in the metaphorical sand. Gail Mosby's death, in his professional and expert estimation, was not a suicide. It was, without a shadow of a doubt, homicide. His insistence would prove to be the critical, first turning point in a long journey toward truth. A family's unwavering conviction, the irreverence of maternal love and life's purpose. In the immediate wake of such a shocking discovery, amplified by official pronouncements and media speculation, initial perceptions often solidify quickly. However, for those who intimately and truly knew Gail Mosby, the burgeoning suggestion of suicide was met with a visceral, immediate, and profound rejection, a deeply ingrained and unshakable disbelief. Her children, still raw with the fresh wound of grief, were unwavering and resolute in their conviction. They thought that my mom had committed suicide. I never believed that for a second. Joseph's certainty, a deep-seated truth in his young heart, was absolute, undiminished by the weight of any official reports or pronouncements. For him, and for his older brother, Bill, the underlying rationale was profoundly simple, universally understood, and fundamentally human: the unyielding, selfless power of a mother's unconditional love. My mom valued family the most in life. This was not a passing sentiment for Gail. It was the unwavering moral compass that unerringly guided her entire existence, the animating force behind her every decision, every sacrifice, and every conscious action. Everything she did in her life was take care of her children. Her children were her purpose, her joy, her reason for living. From the rigorous perspective of criminal psychology, understanding a victim's core motivations and intrinsic psychological makeup is paramount. A truly suicidal individual, even one in the throes of profound clinical depression, often grapples with an overwhelming and suffocating sense of being a burden, of being an insurmountable obstacle to the happiness and well-being of their loved ones. However, Gail's children consistently attested, with heart-wrenching certainty, to her boundless, utterly self-sacrificing love. Her entire adult life, every conscious choice, every arduous day, was an eloquent testament to their well-being, their growth, and their ultimate success. The very idea of her voluntarily abandoning them, particularly at such tender, vulnerable ages, was not merely improbable in their minds. It was an act utterly irreconcilable, a grotesque psychological contradiction to her fundamental character, her very essence as a mother. I knew something happened to her. This powerful sentiment, passionately echoed by her close family and dearest friends, serve as an unshakable internal bulwark against the tide of the official suicide narrative, an intuitive, deeply felt truth that no amount of superficial circumstantial evidence could possibly dismantle. Their profound grief was now irrevocably compounded by a gnawing, agonizing suspicion that Gail's passing was not an act of internal despair, but a malevolent act of external design, cold-blooded and intentional. They would not rest until this truth was illuminated. The tapestry of life, Gail Pekovzak, architect of love, ambition, and resilience. To truly grasp the fervent and absolute rejection of the suicide theory by Gail's loved ones, one must first meticulously delve into the rich and vibrant tapestry of her life, understanding the remarkable woman she was and the core values that inextricably defined her. Gail Pekovzak was born on September 13th, 1952, amidst the charming, historically rich landscapes of Natchez, Mississippi. She was the eldest of 3 daughters, raised within the structured yet profoundly loving embrace of a devoutly Catholic home, a foundational environment that instilled within her deeply cherished virtues of discipline, unwavering faith, unwavering commitment, and a strong, inherent sense of community. My grandparents, Frank and Jackie, had 3 daughters, Gail, Lisa, and Jackie. Gail was the eldest. My mom is Lisa. She was the middle child. And then Jackie was the baby. This close-knit family environment, anchored firmly by her dedicated grandparents, meticulously instilled within Gail profound, lifelong appreciation for hard work, unwavering effort, moral integrity, and the joy derived from earned rewards. They were a loving household. My grandparents understood that you had to work hard to be able to appreciate the fun things in life. This fundamental lesson, imparted early and reinforced often, profoundly shaped Gail's approach to both her rigorous studies and her chosen professional career, infusing them with purpose and diligence. From her formative early years, Gail distinguished herself not merely by her innate intelligence, but, more importantly, by an unwavering, almost fierce dedication to academic excellence and intellectual pursuit. My Aunt Gail, growing up, they always described her as very studious. She was very, very intelligent. These formidable intellectual capacities were not simply uncultivated innate gifts. They were meticulously honed through rigorous discipline, tireless study, and an insatiable thirst for knowledge, culminating in a notable academic achievement that foreshadowed her future successes. She graduated as salutatorian of her high school. This remarkable academic prowess served as a powerful stepping stone, meticulously paving the way for her pursuit of a noble, deeply compassionate, and profoundly demanding career path. When my mom graduated from high school, she went to Northwestern to study to become a nurse. The intentional choice of nursing, a profession that intrinsically demands both acute intellectual acuity, meticulous attention to detail, and profound, boundless empathy, speaks volumes about the very core of Gail's character and her innate desire to care for others. Her post-graduation career flourished with remarkable speed and success, quickly establishing her as a highly respected and immensely capable professional within the challenging medical field. Post-graduation, she became a very successful NICU nurse, where she took care of the tiniest and most fragile little babies and enjoyed her job immensely. The specialization in neonatal intensive care unit, NICU, nursing is profoundly indicative of Gail's inner strength, her remarkable capacity for empathy, and her unwavering nurturing spirit, caring for the most vulnerable of human lives, the tiniest and most fragile little babies, demands immense, almost saint-like patience, an almost obsessive, meticulous attention to the minutest detail, profound emotional resilience in the face of constant life and death struggles, and an unwavering, fierce commitment to preserving and enhancing life at its most nascent stages. Such a demanding calling, so fundamentally life-affirming and relentlessly dedicated to protecting fragile existence, stands in stark, irreconcilable, and utter contradiction to the very idea of self-destruction. The entire essence of her professional life was dedicated, unequivocally, to safeguarding and fighting for life, making the notion of her willingly ending her own life utterly inconceivable and utterly absurd to everyone who intimately knew her work and her passion. By her late 20s, Gail had firmly established her thriving professional career in the bustling city of Jackson, Mississippi, a testament to her inherent ambition, relentless dedication, and exceptional capabilities. With her professional life flourishing, she felt a natural and deeply human inclination towards building a family of her own, a common and universally cherished desire. Her path serendipitously intersected with Richard Mosby through convivial mediation of a mutual friend, Aunt Liz, who also worked with Gail. My mom and dad met when my Aunt Liz, who worked with my mom, introduced them. Richard Mosby, originally hailing from Canton, Mississippi, presented a charming, approachable, and seemingly affable persona. He was referred to as Happy or Smiley. He always had a big smile on his face. His fun-loving, somewhat light-hearted, and generally easygoing nature seemed, at the time, to perfectly complement Gail's more driven, ambitious, and meticulously organized temperament. After a relatively brief courtship, characterized by evident mutual affection and a shared vision of a harmonious family life, they decided to marry, committing to building a future together. My parents were married in 1981. Their loving union soon brought the joyous, often cacophonous, sound of children into their lives, expanding their family and their happiness. They had my brother Bill in 1982, and then I was born in 1985. To the external world, observing their burgeoning family unit, they appear to be genuinely content, deeply happy, and profoundly in love, a couple achieving the quintessential American dream. They appear to be very happy, very much in love. Aunt Gail was happy to finally have found someone. This pervasive sense of fulfillment, of having meticulously achieved the personal and professional milestones she had desired, further powerfully countered the emerging dark narrative of internal despair and self-destruction. To provide for their rapidly growing family, Richard embarked on an entrepreneurial venture, establishing his own tire business in the vibrant city of Hammond, Louisiana. He and Gail subsequently acquired a house there, seemingly settling comfortably into a promising new life filled with shared aspirations, domestic bliss, and the bustling energy of young children. My first memories of life were growing up in Hammond. My dad was a great dad, and my mom was a great mom. I felt loved by both of them. These idyllic early years were imbued with the warmth of familial affection and a reassuring sense of domestic stability, painting a picture-happy, carefree childhood. However, Richard's entrepreneurial ambition, unfortunately, soon encountered unforeseen and formidable obstacles. My father had a family tire business in Canton, Mississippi that was fairly successful, and I think my dad wanted to try to duplicate that. The powerful desire to replicate past successes is an almost universally strong motivator for many entrepreneurs. But the capricious market, particularly for new ventures, can often be profoundly unforgiving. But unfortunately, the business failed. The collapse of the tire business delivered a devastating blow, profoundly impacting their lives not only financially, but also emotionally. Gail, with her characteristic fortitude, immense inner strength, and unwavering dedication, continued to work diligently as a highly successful NICU nurse, thereby providing the primary and often sole income for the family. However, the combined and escalating economic burden of supporting 2 young children and covering mounting rent payments, particularly after cessation of Richard's income, proved to be an overwhelming strain on a single salary. Faced with these undeniable and increasingly harsh financial realities, Gail and Richard made the incredibly difficult and emotionally arduous decision to relocate back to Jackson, Mississippi, hoping to secure a fresh start and more stable employment for Richard. So she and Richard made the difficult decision to move back to Jackson. Upon their return, Richard secured a position, as Gail understood, back with the long-established family tire company in Canton. However, his financial circumstances had irrevocably shifted downwards. He was not making the money he had made prior. The diminished income, coupled with the profound psychological weight and emotional strain of a failed business venture, created an environment ripe with marital tension, underlying friction and mounting stress. There was a lot of stress. This toxic confluence of economic pressure shattered professional aspirations, and emotional strain ultimately fractured the once solid foundations of their once happy marriage. The failure of the tire business and the strain economically that it put on my family ended up leading to them divorcing. Yet, even in the deeply personal and often acrimonious dissolution of their marriage, Gail and Richard, to their credit, demonstrated a remarkably commendable maturity, particularly where their children's well-being was concerned. My parents got divorced in 1986, but they still got along great. I mean, it was a happy family still. It's just that they weren't married. This remarkable, often rare, post-divorce amicability, which prioritized effective co-parenting above personal grievances or lingering resentment, serve as a powerful testament to their shared, enduring commitment to their beloved sons. Following the divorce, my mom had full custody and my dad had every other weekend. They got along better post-divorce then. They did when they were married. They were very amicable. Such a healthy and functional co-parenting relationship, truly admirable and unfortunately rare in many divorces, eloquently illustrated Gail's enduring dedication to creating a stable, emotionally secure, and loving environment for her children, even in the face of her own profound personal heartache and marital dissolution. 2 years subsequent to their divorce, Richard chose to remarry, embarking on a new marital journey. Gail, however, consciously and deliberately chose a different path, remaining single and unequivocally dedicating herself, heart and soul, to the multifaceted demands and profound joys of motherhood. For her, motherhood was not merely a societal role. It was an all-encompassing identity, a profound life purpose that superseded and outshone any personal romantic aspirations. For her, motherhood came before everything else. Her children's ultimate success, their happiness, their flourishing lives, were her most cherished and overriding ambitions. My mom's greatest aspiration was to be able to see me and my brother successful and grow up to be the best we could be. Her innate, almost boundless patience, meticulously honed and perfected in the demanding, high-stakes environment of the NICU, extended effortlessly and profoundly to her own beloved sons, a wellspring of calm and understanding. I don't know how my mother could be as patient as she was with me. This boundless capacity for unconditional love, unwavering understanding, and constant, steadfast support was a hallmark of her exemplary parenting, a defining characteristic universally recognized and cherished by her children. That's what made my mother such a great mother, is how much I sensed that she cared about me. Gail's entire life, when viewed in its rich and complex totality, was an eloquent and compelling narrative of unyielding ambition, profound personal resilience, deep human connection, and an overwhelming, utterly selfless dedication to her children, a constellation of attributes that made the notion of her willingly committing suicide an act utterly inconsistent with the very fabric of her being, a betrayal of everything she fundamentally stood for, fiercely loved and deeply cherished. The journal's confession, a glimmer of personal turmoil, a veil of secrecy torn by envy. 6 arduous and dedicated years had passed since Gail assumed the challenging and profoundly important mantle of a single mother. Years she had devoted unreservedly to nurturing her beloved sons and meticulously constructing a stable, loving home, a sanctuary of peace and growth for them. Now, she was discovered dead in her bathtub, presented initially as an apparent suicide, a narrative that threatened to simplify and tragically misrepresent her complex life. The subsequent discovery of her personal journal at the scene initially offered what many interpreted as a potential, albeit deeply tragic, explanation for such an unimaginable act, providing a glimpse into her emotional struggles. Her journal found at the scene offers a potential reason for why she would end her own life. Within its intimate and deeply private pages, Gail's handwritten thoughts revealed a period of significant emotional distress, a vulnerability often, and perhaps too easily, associated with profound personal crises and depression. She had been having some problems with depression at the time. The entry spoke candidly and with raw emotion of a recent, profoundly painful breakup in her life. It describes a very unhappy breakup with a woman she had been having an apparently pretty, long-term relationship with. This deeply personal revelation regarding Gail's romantic life, particularly the clandestine nature of her relationship, came as a genuine shock to her children, hinting at a facet of her emotional world that she had, understandably, kept largely private and hidden. I never really knew that they were dating at the time, my mom and her girlfriend, but I still remember my mom on the couch after they had broken up, crying and just being very, very affected by this breakup. The raw, palpable grief and intense emotional pain expressed both in the journal and vividly recalled by her. Son painted a poignant picture of deep heartache, a profound emotional wound that could indeed contribute significantly to a depressive state. This vulnerability was real, and it formed a superficial anchor for the suicide theory. To properly and sensitively analyze this crucial element, it is imperative for a criminal psychology analyst to meticulously contextualize Gail's personal experiences within the prevailing social landscape of the early 1990s. In Mississippi in the early 90s, having a homosexual relationship would have been a very troubling thing to do in terms of societal acceptance. The deeply conservative ethos that permeated Mississippi society during that specific era imposed immense social pressures, fostered widespread stigma, and often led to overt discrimination against individuals involved in same-sex relationships. That would cause someone to have a hard time expressing their heartache. The pervasive weight of societal disapproval, coupled with deeply ingrained cultural norms and moral judgments, frequently forces individuals into a profound state of emotional isolation, effectively preventing them from openly sharing and processing their intense personal pain without legitimate fear of judgment, ostracism, social repercussions, or even professional discrimination. Mississippi is still a conservative state, and there still is a stigma among certain people, and the climate at that time or relationship would have been defined a lot differently. This enforced secrecy and the agonizing lack of social support for her emotional struggles could, unequivocally, exacerbate feelings of depression and despair, potentially making an individual feel more acutely vulnerable, deeply alone, and isolated in their profound suffering. Such sustained emotional suppression and social isolation are well documented, powerful factors in deepening and prolonging depressive episodes. However, even with this deeply personal and undeniably influential potential motive, a broken heart compounded by significant and stifling societal pressures, not everyone at the grim scene that fateful day in May of 1992 was, for a moment, genuinely convinced that Gail Mosby chose to end her own life. There was just something amiss, and it's that old police gut feeling that something was wrong. This gut feeling, often casually dismissed, is far from mere intuition. It represents the powerful, cumulative distillation of years of intensive experience, a subconscious, finely tuned recognition of subtle inconsistencies that fundamentally contradict typical human behavior in moments of crisis or despair. The meticulous, almost surgical order of the scene, which was initially and hastily interpreted as compelling evidence supporting a planned, deliberate suicide, now began to feel artificial, eerily pristine, almost disturbingly perfect, a calculated display. Everything was just too damn neat. It almost looked staged. This sense of unnatural, almost chilling precision, rather than a raw, often chaotic despair or even the morbid, unsettling messiness frequently associated with a desperate, spontaneous act of self-harm, immediately raised profound red flags for the trained, skeptical eye of the investigators. A mind truly grappling with overwhelming despair often leaves behind a chaotic reflection of its internal state, not an immaculate, composed order. This profound incongruity was deeply unsettling to seasoned police professionals. There's something we're missing here, and I can't put my finger on it. The subtle whispers of suspicion were no longer mere whispers. They were transforming into a distinct, persistent, and insistent murmur, strongly suggesting that Gail Mosby's death was infinitely more complex, infinitely more sinister, and utterly deliberate than it initially appeared. The journal, while accurately reflecting genuine inner turmoil, did not, on its own, exclusively dictate the violent manner of her death, especially when its emotional context was so powerfully contradicted by the stark, undeniable forensic observations at the scene. The puzzle pieces, while individually plausible, refused to fit the picture presented, pointing instead to a darker, hidden image: the clash of authority, a detective's conviction against a coroner's dogma, and the cracking of a frame. The evening of May 24th, 1992, bore down with a heavy, oppressive burden of unresolved questions lingering ominously around perplexing death of single Mother Gail Mosby. Into this fraught and emotionally charged atmosphere stepped Jackson Police Homicide Detective Al LeDoux, a respected and formidable figure, renowned for his keen intellect, razor-sharp wit, and an almost obsessive, unwavering attention to most minute details of a crime scene. He was a great detective, and he paid attention to detail. Unlike many who might have been readily swayed by the initial, convenient pronouncements of suicide, Detective LeDoux approached the scene not with a preconceived notion, but with the necessary open mind, the relentless skepticism, and the professional acumen of an investigator tasked solely with uncovering the raw, unvarnished truth, however ugly or uncomfortable it might be. He immediately started working as a murderer. This essential mindset, cultivated over years of confronting grim realities, is crucial in complex cases. It ensures that no possibility, however remote, is prematurely discarded or casually overlooked in the rush to conclude, while diligently acknowledging all potential scenarios, including an accidental overdose or a severe, unexpected reaction to medication. There was a possibility that maybe she took some meds and just had a bad reaction. But, you got to explore all possibilities. His underlying, powerful professional instinct stubbornly whispered of foul play. The paradox that confronted him was stark and deeply unsettling. There was absolutely nothing that would indicate anything was wrong other than there was a dead woman in the bathtub. This very lack of overt, violent chaos and the silent presence of death itself gnawed relentlessly at his acute sense of professional intuition. He and I both just knew there was just something we were missing, but we didn't know what it was, and he was going to find it. His unwavering determination, a quintessential hallmark of truly excellent detective work, would ultimately prove paramount in meticulously unraveling the stubbornly complex knot of deception. Detective LeDoux meticulously conducted a painstaking, systematic sweep of the entire residence, moving with the methodical precision of a predator hunting its prey, observing every surface, every shadow. His initial findings largely aligned with earlier observations by the patrol officer. No overt, discernible signs of forced entry or violent, overt physical struggle were immediately apparent within the living areas. He looked around a lot and did not see anything turn over, no indication anybody had tried to break in a window or the door. The house, with its eerily pristine interiors, stubbornly maintained its deceptive air of undisturbed normalcy, almost as if its profound stillness was a carefully constructed, elaborate lie, a deliberate stage. However, a single, seemingly minor detail, a subtle anomaly that stubbornly resisted the illusion, managed to capture his finely tuned, trained eye, a framed picture. But he did happen to notice that there was a framed picture. The glass was cracked. This was not just an ordinary broken object, a piece of accidental damage. It was a profound incongruity, a physical anomaly conspicuously out of place in an otherwise perfectly pristine and orderly environment. It represented a tiny, almost surgical, rupture in the carefully woven fabric of the stage crime scene. The more I looked at it, the more I got suspicious of it, and so was the lead detective. He and we just said there's something wrong. The cracked glass, a subtle yet profoundly significant detail, a guarded secret deliberately withheld from public knowledge, would later become an irrefutable validation of true insider knowledge, proving invaluable in precisely discerning truth from sophisticated deception, an indicator of a struggle that had indeed occurred. Despite these rapidly escalating suspicions among the police officers, the ultimate official determination of the cause, and, even more critically, the precise manner of death, ultimately rested with the county coroner. The respective roles of these two critical authorities are distinct yet interdependent. While the police primarily investigate the crime and its perpetrators, the coroner's singular jurisdiction is to investigate the death itself, providing the medical and legal classification. The crime scene's mine. The homicide case is a homicide detective's, but the body belongs to the coroner. As part of his official and statutorily mandated duties, the coroner arrived on scene, formally pronounced Gale deceased, and proceeded to conduct his own visual assessment of both the scene and the body. As part of his duty, he pronounced her deceased and, looked at the scene, and there was nothing to indicate foul play. There was a small abrasion on her nose, but nothing that indicated that anybody had beaten her into an unconscious state and put her in the bathtub. Based on these cursory observations, and perhaps influenced by the initial presentation of the scene, the lack of overt chaos, and the seemingly straightforward suicide narrative, the coroner, with remarkable swiftness, rendered his ruling. Gale's death was accidental drowning. This ruling, however, struck a profoundly discordant and jarring note, directly clashing with the growing instincts and the rigorous professional suspicions of the patrol officer and the homicide detective present. The experienced patrol officer, whose acute physiological observations had first cast doubt upon the suicide theory, found himself unable to let the medical opinion stand unchallenged, bravely voicing his profound, scientifically informed skepticism. I said, "Really? Can you really drown in this bathtub?" The coroner's response, unfortunately, was not one of reasoned medical explanation, open discussion, or professional collaborative inquiry, but rather one of dismissive, unyielding, and authoritative pronouncement. And his word was to me exactly this. He said, "You can if I say you can." And I knew then, okay, this is where it's going to go. This astonishing statement, delivered with an air of unassailable finality and undeniable arrogance, brazenly exposed a troubling professional inflexibility, an ego-driven and obstinate adherence to an initial, unexamined judgment, regardless of contradictory evidence. He and I got along up until this point, all the years we worked together, but I thought it was a bad judgment call on his part, and he wasn't willing to look at any other options, and for some reason, he dug his heels on this particular case due to the fact that the lead and I both felt that there was something wrong. This intellectual stubbornness, a common human failing that can plague even the most seasoned professionals, became an immediate and formidable obstacle to the rightful administration of justice, threatening to bury the truth under a veneer of official, yet erroneous, legitimacy. Despite the unshakable official ruling, Detective Ledoux and his determined colleagues were far from deterred, their resolve only hardened in the face of such dismissive obstinacy. They understood, with absolute clarity, the critical importance of maintaining an open avenue for future inquiry, thereby ensuring that the investigation did not simply conclude based on a potentially flawed initial judgment. We put on our offense, report there was a death pending, and that left the door open for us for further investigation. This subtle but profoundly significant bureaucratic maneuver allowed them to bypass the immediate, legally binding finality of the coroner's ruling, granting them the essential legal and procedural space to continue their relentless pursuit of the truth, even if it explicitly meant directly challenging a fellow official. For the moment, however, the grim realities of their immediate duty persisted. Their next, most heart-wrenching step was to formally inform Gail's immediate family of her death, a devastating pronouncement framed by the official yet contentious determination of apparent suicide. This notification, presented with official gravity and cold impartiality, would soon unleash a torrent of inconsolable pain, coupled with a fierce, intuitive, and ultimately validated rebuttal from those who knew Gail best, who understood her life, and who intrinsically recognized the lie. The shattered innocence, a father's grim task in children's indignant rejection of lies. The most painful and emotionally wrenching task following Gail's sudden and mysterious death fell, with crushing inevitability, upon her ex-husband, Richard. It was his grim duty to deliver the devastating, life-altering news to their two young sons, Joseph and Bill. This moment would prove to be one of profound, unparalleled trauma, an emotional earthquake that would irrevocably alter and scar the landscape of their young, innocent childhoods. He said, "Look, we got to tell you something. Your mom's dead." For a child, such stark, unambiguous words are an immediate and violent assault on comprehension, an unfathomable blow that shatters the very foundation of their secure, predictable world. Joseph's immediate, instinctive reaction was a desperate, almost primal attempt to recoil from the unbearable reality, to refute the crushing finality that had just descended. And I said, "You're joking." The delicate innocence of childhood, desperately seeking reassurance and comfort, grapples awkwardly and tragically with the brutal, absolute finality of death, especially when it is so unexpected. But the undeniable, crushing truth manifested itself vividly in his father's profound, raw grief, a sudden, overwhelming torrent of uncontrolled emotion that could not possibly be feigned or concealed. Well, then my dad started crying, and then I knew, and I collapsed, and I'll never remember getting up. The vivid, searing memory of physical collapse, a visceral and involuntary manifestation of acute shock, unimaginable sorrow, and the shattering of his world, powerfully illustrated the profound depth of his initial anguish and the indelible, permanent mark it left upon him, a scar etched deep into his nascent consciousness. Even at their tender, impressionable ages, young Joseph and Bill possessed a rudimentary, yet clear, understanding of the abstract concept of suicide. Yet, this somber concept, when it was presented as the explanation for the loss of their vibrant, loving mother, was something they both vehemently, absolutely, and indignantly rejected, an idea so utterly alien to her known character as to be utterly absurd, logically and emotionally untenable. Even at that age, I understood what suicide was. So to have someone tell me that my mom committed suicide was just the most absurd thing that I could think of. This was not merely the often seen denial phase of acute grief. It was more profoundly a deeply ingrained, almost intuitive conviction rooted in their intimate, lived, and profound experience of their mother's essence. Gail's unwavering, selfless love for them, her steadfast and often demonstrated commitment to their well-being and happiness, her profoundly resilient spirit, these fundamental and immutable aspects of her being rendered the idea of her willingly abandoning them, particularly at such tender, vulnerable ages, an absolute impossibility. The official explanation, delivered with the weight of authority, clashed violently, irreconcilably, and profoundly with their deep and unwavering knowledge of their mother's